Today we're going to talk about some books where when someone asks you what you're reading and you explain the plot, they simply reply with, "What the f is wrong with you?" The type of book that stays with you long after you finish reading it. While there is some truly disturbing imagery and some gruesome scenes in these books, that isn't the most distressing thing about them. Extreme body horror or other gruesome imagery will make me go, "Ooh," but it won't disturb me. The themes of these books though, and the actions of the characters in these brilliant but messed up books have left a lasting impact on my psyche. Now, a content warning before we go any further. While I won't be going into graphic detail of any of the scenes in these books, I will be talking about some pretty dark themes, some of which involve children. I would not blame you at all if you want to dip on this video. Next week should be much more cheery. Seriously, there will be a few lighthearted comments and a few jokes sprinkled in just to bring the video some levity, but this would definitely be one of the darker videos that we ever do, and there's nothing to be ashamed of for recognizing a subject matter that's just too much for you. I still really appreciate you clicking on this video, but now just give anyone a few seconds if they want to get out of here. It's about to get dark. Okay, if you're still here, let me just say, what the is wrong with you? What up, fiction fam? Welcome to Down to Read if this is your first time here, and thanks for coming back if you're a regular. We see you, not in a serial killer type of way, and we appreciate your patronage. My name is Steven, and today we're going to talk about the 5 most disturbing books that I've ever read. While these books will make you uncomfortable and can be pretty distressing, they're also genuinely brilliant books. There's something to be said for a book that can push you to your absolute limit, kind of like riding a roller coaster. A really messed up roller coaster. I will be talking about these 5 books in order of least disturbing to most disturbing to me, but of course they're all pretty unsettling. Anyway, that's enough of the intro. Let's talk some books. Book 5, The Killer Inside Me by Jim Thompson. This book is told from the perspective of Lou Ford, a deputy sheriff in Central City, a small town in rural Texas. Lou comes across as a normal, likable guy, but this is merely a facade, hiding Lou's sickness. Lou is a depraved sociopath, a serial killer, and experiencing this story through this killer's eyes makes it both harder to read and more engaging. Lou has had this sickness, as he refers to it, since he was only a kid when he assaulted a young girl. And thankfully, we don't have to learn too much about this heinous act in detail, as it happened in Lou's past. Lou's foster brother Mike took the blame for this assault, but it was enough to scare Lou and make him want to bury this sickness deep within him. And that worked. For a while. Events early in the book cause this sickness to reawaken in Lou, and we see all the horrifying things that Lou does through his eyes. As horrible as some of these scenes are, what I found truly horrifying was hearing Lou's thoughts as he rationalizes assaulting a woman or killing someone in cold blood, and how he can go from murdering someone to just having the most casual conversation with a member of their family, like nothing happened. There are times in this book where Lou comes across as fairly level-headed, almost normal, but we learn early that Lou's mood can turn on a dime, which gives the reader this persistent feeling of tension and unease. With every interaction that Lou has with another person, you never know if it will end with a goodbye and that will be it, or if it will suddenly escalate. Lou will be having seemingly normal thoughts, just shooting the shit with someone, which will then be suddenly interspersed with thoughts like, "That's what you think, honey, I'm doing you a favor by not beating your head off." As Lou's sickness grows, his mental state unravels.
Turn it off.
And because this is being told from the first person perspective, it makes us as the reader feel like we're starting to go a little bit crazy too. But not to the same extent of some of the books I'm going to talk about later in this list. Without giving the ending away, it certainly is climactic. It just doesn't pack the punch of some of the books later in this list, which is why I've got it at number 5. It's still a very messed up and unsettling book. Before we move on, I'd be remiss if I didn't give Matt from Books for the Back Porch a shout out. Matt got me onto this book. So yeah, thanks for that, Matt. For real though, Matt has a great channel if you enjoy the darker side of fiction. I'll link his channel in the description of this video. He even has a review of this book in fact, which you should go and check out. Book 4, The Wasp Factory by Ian Banks. I've talked about this one a bit before on this channel, as it was the most disturbing book that I read last year. Or disturbingest book is The Wasp Factory. But just in case you are new to the adventures of this 16-year-old boy, Frank, let me explain why this one made the list. Frank lives with just his dad on a small Scottish island. His mother left when he was young, and his brother Eric has been sent away to a mental institution. This book is also told from the first person perspective. But whereas with Lou, he was a cold-blooded killer that we felt no empathy for, Frank's a 16-year-old boy who we do feel empathy for, as we see that he's had a really rough life, a rough upbringing, and there are moments like when he goes to the pub with his mates that we can really relate to him. But it is safe to say that Frank is not a nice person. In fact, I was continually horrified by the things that Frank did. Frank recalls how he killed other children, which he's terrifyingly casual about, and we also see him commit violence against animals. He uses the body parts of these animals to perform rituals or create sadistic machines by combining them with items he's collected from across the island or from the scrapyard in the nearby town. Did I mention Frank's not a nice person? Frank's brother Eric has escaped the mental institution he'd been committed to and is on his way back to the island to see his wee brother. As he makes his way back, Eric calls home, and these phone conversations between Eric and Frank get tense, though they are admittedly also some of my favourite parts of the book. The setting of this book, a remote Scottish island, coupled with Eric's impending arrival home, make us the reader have this real feeling of hopelessness. Now you're probably thinking, alright, I get why this one's disturbing, but a boy in a hopeless situation who commits violence against children and animals, that would not be an easy read. And you're not wrong. But Ian Banks has a way of making these sections of the books easier to read by sprinkling in some dark, really dark, humour. Parts of this book that have had the biggest lasting impact on me were the big reveals, particularly when we found out what it was that caused Eric's mental illness. If you haven't read this book, consider yourself warned. And if you have, sorry for bringing that up, but let's be honest, you're probably thinking about that scene every now and then. Anyway, Book 3, The Pillow Man by Martin McDonagh. If you don't know anything about this book other than it's a script for a play written by Martin McDonagh, you're probably puzzled as to why it ranked so high on my disturbing list. Like really, the writer for In Bruges and The Banshees of Inisherin? Like sure, they are dark in parts, but they're more dark comedy really.
I have a set of shears at home, and each time you bother me from this day on, I'll take those shears and I'll take one of my fingers off with them, and I'll give that finger to you.
Or you may be thinking, how disturbing can a script for a play truly be? It can't be that engaging with all the stage descriptions and whatnot, right? Wrong. The Pillow Man takes place in the cell of a totalitarian regime's prison. A man, a writer and storyteller, Guturian, is being interrogated by the regime's secret police as the details of some recent child murders mirror what happens in his stories. Part of what I think allows this play script to still be so immersive is this interrogation setting, as it almost reads like an interrogation transcript. There are parts where Guturian reflects on his childhood which are truly heartbreaking, such as when he recalls his brother being locked in the room next to him and he could hear his parents torturing his brother through the wall. Let's just say that Guturian's childhood experience inspired a lot of his stories. The Pillow Man. The Pillow Man's face was a circular pillow. He had buttons for eyes, and he was always smiling so you could see his teeth, which were also pillows. When people are on the verge of suicide because of the traumatic lives that they've lived, the Pillow Man goes back in time to visit them as children and show them the horrifying lives they have ahead of them. These children then make a choice to prevent themselves from having to live these lives. The Pillow Man is upset by this task that he has to complete, so he goes back in time to visit himself as a child, the Pillow Boy, and the Pillow Boy makes a decision so that the Pillow Man isn't around anymore. With no Pillow Man around to complete his mission, these children grow up to live these horrifying lives of abuse and distress. This story, and a lot of Guturian stories, have really stuck with me, and I'm sure they will with you too. In addition to these stories, the things that Guturian has had to endure in the real world, and the actions he feels he's needed to take, are really heartbreaking and have stuck with me just as much, as I wonder what would I do in some of these horrendous situations. There are some moments of McDonagh's signature dark humour sprinkled in which do give the story some levity, but the disturbing moments of this wee thing have left an imprint on my brain forever, and that's why it's number 3. Book 2, Piercing by Ryu Murakami. I was first exposed to Ryu Murakami when I saw the film adaptation to his book Audition, which to this day is one of the most messed up films I've ever seen. Kitty 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 kitty! If you know, you know. So I knew I was in for a doozy when I was going to read this one. In fact, so much so that when I began to read this book, I took a deep breath. And this book doesn't pull any punches from the very first line, where we meet Kawashima Masayuki. Now keep in mind, before I read this line, that the subject matter is Kawashima's 4-month-old baby girl. A small living creature, asleep in its crib, like a laboratory animal in a cage, thought Kawashima Masayuki. Kawashima lives a seemingly happy life with a fulfilling career and a loving family, but every night he finds himself standing next to his daughter's crib, holding an ice pick and with an urge to use it on this poor, unsuspecting baby. Fortunately, Kawashima finds out something he can do to keep that urge at bay. Unfortunately, that something is finding another unsuspecting victim to drive this ice pick into. This brings us to the other main character of this book, a sex worker, Sanada Chiaki. Now that setup probably doesn't sound like a barrel of laughs already, but the truly disturbing parts of this book, we're learning about the child abuse that both Kawashima and Chiaki suffered at the hands of their parents, which shaped them into the people they are today. We learn in detail about the defense mechanisms these two characters have had to put into place just to get through life. Then when these two tortured souls meet, their interactions are unlike anything else I've ever read. This book is told from an omniscient perspective. The first, say, half the book comprise really short chapters where the author focuses on either Kawashima or Chiaki's thoughts and motivations. Because the book is told from this slightly disconnected, omniscient perspective, you may think that this book will not be as impactful or as immersive as some of the books I mentioned earlier in this video. When we get to chapter 10, we see why Murakami elected to use this narrative technique. Chapter 10 takes up about 50% of the book, and it's in this chapter that Murakami uses this narrative technique to erratically jump between the perspectives of these two mentally unwell characters. We aren't going for anyone, we just experience this tense, violent, surreal, and heartbreaking exchange between them both, and you can't put the book down, especially if you're someone like me that needs to finish a reading session at the end of a chapter. Chapter 10 is why this book ranks so highly on this list for me, so if you do pick this one up, brace yourself when you get there. I understand that Murakami's other work, In the Miso Soup and Coin Locker Babies, are more popular than this book. I haven't read them, so I can't compare them to this one on a disturbing scale. And it might be a while before I pick those books up, because scenes from the Audition movie and now this book are already living rent-free in my head, and I only have so much real estate. Book number 1, The Moustache by Emmanuel Carrere. This for a lot of people may seem like a strange number 1 on a disturbing list. And I think it's safe to say that it's not as dark thematically as the other books I've mentioned so far in this video. In fact, the plot of this book sounds almost humorous. An unnamed man shaves off his moustache, which he thinks his wife will find funny. But when his wife doesn't even notice, and not just his wife, no one notices he shaved off his moustache, his world begins to fall apart. Perhaps it is at least partially because this one caught me off guard, which made it so impactful and ranked so high on this list. The other books we've discussed, I knew were going to be dark and disturbing when I was going into them, but this one I was going into mostly blind. All the books on this list are fairly short and took me typically about 1 to 5 days to read. This book is one of the shorter ones and it took me 2 weeks. And check out how thin this thing is. 2 weeks. As this unnamed man begins to spiral and lose his mind, as he questions whether or not he ever had a moustache, or if perhaps everyone's in on some big joke against him. The book is written and translated in such an incredible way that makes us feel like we're losing our minds with him, and really makes us question what's real. Because of this, and because I literally felt like I was going crazy reading this book, I struggled to read more than a chapter or so per reading session. Carrere at times lulls you into a false sense of security, like the man and you are finally getting your shit together, and then he pulls the rug out right from underneath you. Also, all the books I've talked about today have really strong endings, but this one takes the cake, as it hits you with a 1-2 punch of a crazy revelation that makes you question everything, and a really gruesome scene that made me physically shudder. Okay, that's it. That's my list of disturbing books. If you've made it this far, thank you. You sick. Nah, but for real, there is some sheer genius in these books, and parts of them that will stay with me for the rest of my days. If you are someone that doesn't mind darker subject matter, I would recommend reading all of them. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing if you want to see some more content like this one, though perhaps not quite as dark as this one, at least for a while. All of that really helps the channel grow. Oh, and let us know in the comments what's the most disturbing book that you've ever read. Until next time though, we step out of the darkness, take care of yourself, much love, we out. Zhoosh. You sick. Let's go watch an episode of The Office and eat some comfort food or something. I am drained.